They called it a strategy debate, but it was really an ambush. They smiled across polished tables, weighed down with contracts and projections, while quietly rewriting the rules to keep him out. He was the wrong kind of leader in their eyes. Too driven, too direct, too unwilling to play the polite games that kept power exactly where they wanted it. The boardroom wasn't built for someone like him, and they made sure he knew it. They tried to strip his authority with staged votes and whispered doubts, questioned whether his vision was reckless, dangerous, unfit. But they forgot who controlled the real money. The biggest shock wasn't that he fought back, but how easily he made their billions disappear when they forced his hand. This isn't a feel-good corporate tale. It's an unflinching look at sabotage wrapped in civility, racism dressed as caution, and the price of telling the truth when no one wants to hear it. Hit like and subscribe for more stories that cut to the bone, and tell me in the comments, what do you see behind those polished boardroom doors, and where are you watching from? Marcus Grant walked through the gleaming marble lobby of Cobalt Technologies Incorporated, his footfalls quiet but determined on the polished floor. The lobby was immaculate, a testament to the company's carefully cultivated image of cutting-edge prestige. Behind the vast reception desk, the company's chrome logo caught the light, throwing it in clean lines across the floor like a spotlight on success. He checked his watch, 8:59 a.m., exactly on time. He paused, took a slow, measured breath, adjusted the perfect line of his charcoal gray suit, and pushed through the heavy glass door into the executive boardroom. This was the day to unveil the Sustainable Expansion Initiative, the plan that would revolutionize Cobalt Technologies, turning it into the dominant force in green tech manufacturing. It was the culmination of months of research, negotiations, and personal lobbying. Marcus had personally secured over $3 billion in investor commitments, contingent on board approval. $3 billion. Enough to triple production, fund cutting-edge R&D, and lock up critical patents. It was the move that would vault them ahead of their competition, make them untouchable. Inside the boardroom, the air was cool, the lighting carefully diffused across the expansive mahogany table. Richard Sterling sat at the head, as he always did. His white hair was perfectly groomed, his expensive bespoke suit projecting the kind of old money authority that could cow junior partners with a look. To his right was Evelyn Harper, Senior VP of Finance, slender fingers tapping a muted rhythm on a thick leather notebook. Across from her sat Thomas Barrett, the Chief Operating Officer, glancing occasionally at his phone with a small, private smile. Marcus set his slim laptop on the table, plugging it into the room's massive wall-mounted screen. The splash page of his presentation lit up, elegant and professional. "Good morning," Marcus said, voice calm, rehearsed to perfection. He scanned the room. A few lower-level VPs nodded politely. Richard's gaze didn't waver, but it was unreadable. Evelyn didn't bother looking up. Thomas set down his phone slowly, like he had all the time in the world. Marcus clicked the remote, bringing up the first slide. "Today, I'm presenting the Sustainable Expansion Initiative. This isn't just growth, it's a strategic repositioning. We're poised to lead in green technology manufacturing, and this plan leverages our existing infrastructure to outpace competitors while delivering strong returns. I've secured over $3 billion in soft investor commitments, contingent on our go-ahead." He paused, letting the number sink in. Silence. Richard finally lifted his gaze. $3 billion is certainly ambitious," he said in that careful, patrician tone that made even praise sound like a rebuke. Marcus ignored the subtle sting. Ambitious is exactly what we need. Market share is down because we're too conservative. This plan changes that. Evelyn finally spoke without raising her eyes. "It seems risky." Marcus felt heat on his neck, but kept his voice measured. "Every growth strategy carries risk, but these investors believe in our unique position." She didn't respond, simply flipped a page in her notebook, her face a mask of professional boredom. Thomas gave a small, patronizing chuckle. "I mean, did you see the Branson Group memo I sent around last week? They're advising caution, incremental growth." Marcus blinked. He hadn't seen it. "I didn't get that." "Oh, Thomas feigné de surprise." "Odd. Evelyn, you saw it." Evelyn gave a slight nod, lips curving in a hint of amusement. "I didn't see it," Marcus repeated, voice tightening. "If you mean their public white paper from 6 months ago, I read it. It doesn't address our federal contracts or proprietary R&D advantages. Our plan is tailored." Richard set his elbows on the table, fingers steepled. "Still, Branson has a strong track record. They're advising caution. I'm inclined to agree." Marcus straightened slowly, pushing the anger down, tightening his grip on control. There was still work to do. They might have stalled him today, but they wouldn't stop him. He sank into the high-back chair, firing off a quick email to Daniel Chun, thanking him for the support text, asking for an afternoon coffee to talk next steps. He forced his mind to focus. There would be another meeting, another chance. He'd just have to make them see. But the sabotage started before he could even regroup. 2 days later, Marcus found himself walking briskly toward the glass-walled strategy room on the 22nd floor, a stack of fresh investor letters in hand, ready to confront the leadership team again. But when he reached the door, he paused. Through the glass, he could see Thomas Barrett, Evelyn Harper, Harold Wilson, and several mid-level managers huddled around the big oval table, papers spread in front of them. Evelyn tapping notes on her tablet. The projector displayed his own green initiative branding. He felt a sudden, hollow cold in his gut. He pushed open the door. Heads turned sharply at his entrance, the quiet chatter dying. Thomas raised his brows with exaggerated innocence. "Marcus, didn't expect you." Marcus's voice was cool and clipped. Clearly, "What is this?" Evelyn didn't bother looking up. "A strategy sync on next quarter's priorities." Marcus walked slowly around the table, reading the projected slide. It was his plan stripped down, annotated with new bullet points in red. Phase 1 reductions, risk mitigation, incremental targets. His throat went dry. "This is my expansion initiative." Thomas's bland smile never wavered. "Parts of it. We're discussing the realistic elements. The board wanted us to tighten it up before we present anything again." Marcus felt the burn behind his eyes. "So you scheduled a strategy session on my plan without me?" Evelyn finally looked at him. Her voice was buttersoft but cold. "You seemed busy." "I'm the CEO," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a low growl. "This is my initiative. You don't get to edit it behind closed doors." Thomas sighed dramatically. "Marcus, we're just trying to help. You came on pretty strong in the last meeting. It rattled people. We thought it best to workshop the approach before you present it again." Marcus bit back the reply he wanted to spit. He glanced around the room. The junior managers wouldn't meet his eyes. They knew, but no one would speak up. He slowly set the stack of investor letters on the table, letting them fan out. "These are fresh commitments. Institutional funds, pension plans, green venture groups. Over $3 billion contingent on the plan as it was." Evelyn didn't even glance at them. And as it was, the board wasn't ready to sign. "We're not saying no, Marcus. Just not like this." Thomas spread his hands. "It's about buy-in, Marcus. About building consensus. You've got to be willing to compromise." Marcus forced himself to breathe, every muscle tight. He leaned in slightly, voice soft but dangerous. "Schedule the next meeting with me in it, or there won't be one." He turned and walked out, ignoring Thomas's muttered, "Touchy, isn't he?" behind him. Back in his office, Marcus slammed the door hard enough to rattle the glass. He sat heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose. He didn't even have time to process it before his calendar pinged. He clicked accept. Then he stared at the screen, jaw tightening until it hurt. They were isolating him, holding meetings about his own plan without him, then forcing him into finance reviews designed to bury him in minutiae while they rewrote his vision behind his back. And it worked. Marcus leaned forward, voice level but sharp. "I stand by every number. These are validated by investor commitments." Evelyn's eyebrow arched imperceptibly. "Verbal commitments. Contingent on approval of a plan we no longer have confidence in. We're not rejecting growth, just reckless growth." Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. "There's nothing reckless about it. You stripped the plan down until it was meaningless. She didn't even blink. We made it responsible. The board will not sign off on anything else. It went on like that for 90 minutes. Evelyn dissected his projections, arguing for every cut, framing every question to make him defensive in front of half the leadership team. And Marcus, despite knowing exactly what she was doing, couldn't stop himself from arguing. By the end of it, he was hoarse, fingers clenched on the table, aware that the room was silent, watching, judging. As he packed up, Evelyn tapped her stylus slowly. "We'll circulate these revisions later. Marcus, you're free to add comments." He gave her a hard stare and left without a word. But the final blow landed that afternoon. Daniel Chin knocked on his office door, closing it carefully behind him. His face was drawn, worried. "Marcus," he said quietly, sinking into the chair across from him, "you should know they had another meeting this morning. Board only." He had tried data and preparation. They had used that time to sharpen knives. Now it was time for him to fight. He was still CEO. He still had the authority to push the plan forward, and he intended to do it. He called in his direct reports early the next morning, determined to get everyone back on the same page. He walked in with crisp notes, iron suit, and a steady voice. The conference room was quiet as he laid out the revised funding schedule he intended to force through. He kept his tone measured, but every sentence was edged with steel. "We are not scaling this back to some timid half measure," he told them, locking eyes with Evelyn Harper across the table. "We're executing this as I designed it. We have investor commitments that depend on delivering the full plan, not your hacked-up safe version." Evelyn didn't blink. She clicked her pen once and said, voice like ice, "We don't approve spending that hasn't cleared finance. We'll review it in Q3. Marcus leaned forward, voice low. "We're not waiting for Q3. We move now, or we lose our advantage." Evelyn smiled without humor. "That's your opinion." He forced himself to hold her gaze. Around the table, Harold Wilson, head of product, was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, watching with transparent disgust. Marcus ignored him for now. He closed the meeting without thanking them and walked straight to the CFO's office. He forced approval through by invoking his CEO prerogative, signing the funding release for the pilot project on the spot. Evelyn stormed in 10 minutes later, slamming the door so hard the window rattled. "You don't have the votes for this on the board," she hissed. "You're burning goodwill you don't even have." Marcus didn't look up from the document. "You don't need goodwill when you have authority." She actually laughed, a dry, brittle sound. "Authority? You think they'll let you keep this job after you throw money at your vanity project?" Marcus stood slowly, rolling his shoulders once. Stepping close enough, she had to tilt her head to hold his gaze. "This isn't a vanity project. This is the future of the company, and you can either help build it or get the hell out of my way." Evelyn's eyes narrowed to slits. "We'll see." She walked out without another word. That afternoon, Marcus sent a company-wide memo announcing the pilot project was officially greenlit, complete with timelines and deliverables. He copied the investors. He copied the board. It was a direct challenge to anyone trying to slow-walk him into irrelevance. But sabotage works best when it's done in plain sight. The very next day, Marcus flew to Chicago for a client meeting with a critical federal procurement officer. He was there to personally pitch Cobalt's readiness to deliver next-generation sustainable manufacturing solutions, a contract worth hundreds of millions over 5 years. It was a chance to prove the pilot project's viability in real time. Harold Wilson, head of product, insisted on coming along to demonstrate technical alignment. Marcus was suspicious, but couldn't refuse without looking insecure. They arrived at the client's downtown office, greeted by the procurement team in a sleek glass boardroom with perfect views of Lake Michigan. Marcus set up his slides, made polite introductions, and launched into his polished pitch about cost savings, green compliance, and Cobalt's new production strategy. The clients listened, impressed. Marcus felt control returning to him. He could see it in their eyes. They were buying in. That was when Harold leaned forward, cleared his throat, and smiled in that folksy, fake cordial way he had perfected. "Well, this all sounds great in theory, Harold said slowly, eyes twinkling. "But let's be honest. We're not all convinced this leadership has the experience to deliver." Marcus froze, pulse thudding in his ears. The room went silent. Evelyn had locked down the funding pipeline with a quiet, relentless efficiency that made her indispensable to the board. Harold was gutting his credibility extrally, sowing doubt among clients with casual racist jabs hidden as business advice. And Thomas Barrett, ever the grinning diplomat, was floating quietly between them, never getting his hands dirty, always pretending to play peacemaker while nudging the board to think about succession planning. Marcus knew he had to act carefully. He couldn't fire Evelyn outright. Finance would collapse into chaos, and the board would accuse him of a power grab. He couldn't dump Harold immediately without risking production delays that would sabotage the very plan he was trying to save. But he also couldn't let it slide. He was the CEO. He needed to set boundaries. So before dawn, he drafted a formal complaint to HR. He documented Harold's comments in Chicago word for word, quoted the notes from the executive meeting, included the sabotage in funding approvals, and the private insults about his lack of connections. He was meticulous. He didn't want this to look like a personal vendetta. He wanted it to be undeniable. When the sun rose, he sent the email to Linda Collins, the HR director. Linda had been at the company for over a decade, known for her calm, even voice and her passion for resolving conflicts with minimal disruption. Marcus didn't care about disruption. He wanted justice. When he walked into her office at 9 a.m. sharp, she gestured him to sit with a warm corporate smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was already reading the email on her screen, highlighting sections with clinical precision. Marcus sat across from her, spine stiff, fingers interlaced. He watched her read in silence, the room so quiet he could hear the clock ticking on the credenza behind her. Finally, she looked up, steepling her fingers in front of her. "Marcus," she said slowly, using that careful HR tone designed to sound reassuring while putting you on edge, "this is detailed." Marcus nodded once. "Yes, it's factual. It happened." Linda leaned back in her chair slightly. "I appreciate you bringing it to me. But let's be clear, this is a high-stakes situation. Accusing another executive of racial bias is serious." Marcus didn't flinch. "It's not an accusation. It's a description. He told federal clients I didn't understand their culture. He implied I couldn't be trusted to deliver because I don't have the right connections. That's not ambiguous." Linda's eyes didn't waver, but her smile softened like a teacher calming an upset child. "I understand how it felt, but these kinds of statements can be interpreted many ways." Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. He forced his voice calm. "They were meant one way, and we both know what it was." Linda sighed lightly, picking up a pen and tapping it against her pad. "Marcus, you're under a lot of pressure. You're pushing a very aggressive agenda. It's possible that's coloring how you're hearing things. These people are trying to keep the company safe. We don't want to overreact." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So you're saying I'm being sensitive?" Linda shook her head quickly. No, not at all. I'm saying we need to look at the big picture. Have you considered that maybe Harold was just trying to reassure the clients in his own clumsy way?" Marcus stared at her, incredulous. He said, "I don't understand their culture." Linda raised her palms slightly. Maybe he meant government culture, procurement culture, not anything racial. Marcus's voice dropped an octave. "You weren't there." Linda nodded sagely. "And neither was anyone else in this office. That's what makes this so difficult. It's your word against his. And Harold has been here a long time. He has a record of being direct, but not discriminatory." Marcus's fingers drummed against the arm of the chair. "So you're saying it didn't happen?" Linda's voice was calm. "I'm saying it's complicated. We'll look into it. But I want you to think carefully before you escalate. These kinds of accusations can be divisive. They can undermine trust. They can make people hesitant to speak honestly." Marcus laughed once, short and harsh. "Good. Let them be hesitant." Linda didn't smile. "Marcus, I'm trying to help you. Don't make this a crusade. You're already under a microscope. The board is watching closely. They see you pushing a huge, risky plan. They see conflict. If you start accusing your own team of racism, they're going to see you as the problem. Marcus leaned in slowly. So I'm supposed to swallow it. Linda's expression never changed. I'm saying pick your battles. Is this the one you want? Marcus stood up without another word. He turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind him. By noon, the entire executive floor was buzzing. Thomas Barrett's office door was half closed, but Marcus could hear him on the phone, voice pitched low and conspiratorial. Marcus paused in the hall, listening carefully. No, I'm telling you, he's angry. He's making noise about HR now. He might actually try to file. Yeah. No, listen. It's not even about the plan anymore. He's making it about race. He's going to say he's being targeted. A pause. A low laugh. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Reverse discrimination. We can't have that. It'll split the board in half. Investors will freak. Another chuckle. No, we'll manage it. We just need to calm the waters. Keep people focused on stability. He's too emotional. Not a good fit. Marcus felt his pulse thudding in his ears. He stepped away before Thomas could see him, walked briskly to the stairwell, and took the stairs 3 at a time to the next floor. He sent them to the board in a formal packet marked urgent, carefully worded and professionally bound. He spent nights rewriting his speech, rehearsing every line, stripping every hint of anger or accusation from his delivery. He told himself he'd be calm, reasonable, presidential. If they were going to kill this plan, they would have to do it in the full light of day, looking him in the eyes while they betrayed him. The board meeting was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 sharp. Marcus arrived at 8, sitting in his glass-walled office reviewing every slide one more time. The city outside was waking up in gold light, but his own reflection in the window looked hollow-eyed and watchful. At 8:45, he closed his laptop with surgical precision, exhaled once, and walked to the boardroom like a man headed to trial. The room was hushed as he entered. Richard Sterling sat at the head of the table, gray hair immaculate, dark suit perfect, tapping a gold pen against his leather portfolio. Evelyn Harper sat to Richard's right, her tablet screen glowing softly, face unreadable. Thomas Barrett leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, greeting Marcus with a slow, condescending nod. Harold Wilson, of course, sat with arms folded across his chest, smirk on his face like he'd already won. But Marcus didn't care about any of them. His eyes went straight to Daniel Chun, the one board member he'd once thought of as a friend, the one who had texted him hang in there after that first disastrous meeting, the one who'd sworn over coffee last week that he had Marcus's back. Daniel wouldn't meet his eyes. He sat with his notes neatly stacked, eyes down, fingers drumming quietly. Marcus forced his voice even as he began. Thank you for making the time. I won't waste it. You've all seen the materials. We have over $3 billion in funding lined up. We have investor confidence in our leadership, in our technology, in our ability to deliver. This is our chance to lead the green tech revolution, to seize market share while competitors are still reorganizing. I'm asking you today to approve the Sustainable Expansion Initiative as written, not a watered-down compromise. The full plan. He paused. No one spoke, so he pressed on. We've debated this for months. You've all asked for risk analysis. You've all seen my mitigation strategies. You've all demanded guarantees, and I've delivered letters of intent. Investors believe in this plan. But more importantly, I believe in this company. And I believe in all of you. Don't let fear dictate this decision. Don't let cautious incrementalism kill our future. Silence. Richard Sterling cleared his throat delicately. Thank you, Marcus. As always, your passion is admirable. Marcus braced for it. Richard folded his hands. But the board has to consider the broader picture. Investor confidence is one thing. Operational realities are another. We've heard from finance, from product, from operations. There are serious reservations about moving so aggressively. Marcus forced himself not to roll his eyes. Those reservations are designed to kill this plan. Richard's eyebrow ticked upward. Marcus, please. Let's maintain decorum. Evelyn spoke without looking up. Finance does not approve the current budget. Period. Harold grunted. Product can't deliver at that scale. I've said it before. We'll crash and burn. Thomas Barrett smiled like a priest delivering bad news gently. We've talked to consultants. The industry says incremental is safer. Predictable. Marcus turned to Daniel. Daniel, you've read the plan. You know the numbers. Daniel looked up slowly. His face was pale. I've read it. Marcus took a step toward him. Do you believe in it? Daniel swallowed. Marcus, it's not that simple. Yes, it is, Marcus said, voice shaking. Do you believe in it? Daniel exhaled. I think it's too aggressive right now. Investors are nervous. The team is divided. We need stability. Marcus felt like he'd been punched. Stability, he repeated numbly. Daniel didn't look at him. Richard nodded solemnly. Thank you, Daniel. That's exactly the point. We're not rejecting growth. We're rejecting recklessness. The vote today is on proceeding as Marcus has proposed. All in favor? Silence. Marcus raised his own hand. Alone. Richard waited politely, then sighed. All opposed. Hands went up around the table. Evelyn, Harold, Thomas, even Daniel. Marcus dropped his hand slowly, the blood roaring in his ears, so loud he barely heard Richard's smooth voice saying, "Motion fails." He didn't sit. He didn't move. He just stared at Daniel, who refused to look back. Richard closed his portfolio softly. Marcus, there's no denying you've worked hard on this. You're a brilliant strategist, a passionate advocate. But you're dividing the company. You're creating fear. Investors want calm, consistency. Marcus's voice was low and shaking. So you're killing the plan. Richard shook his head sadly. We're tabling it. Indefinitely. Marcus laughed once, harsh and ugly. Don't lie. You're burying it. Richard's face hardened. Watch your tone, Marcus. Silence fell like a shroud. Instead, they were waiting for him to resign. Waiting for him to get the message and leave quietly. That was their plan. Starve him of power. Embarrass him until he left of his own accord. He closed the laptop with shaking fingers, rage boiling in his veins. They wanted him to accept humiliation. They wanted him to surrender. He wouldn't. The next morning, he arrived at headquarters early, as always. The lobby security guard gave him an uncertain nod, eyes flicking to the company badge that still read CEO. Marcus walked straight to the executive floor, ignoring the hush that followed him. When he entered his office, he saw the envelope someone had slid under the door in the night. Another copy of the advisory contract. He didn't touch it. He didn't even kick it aside. He just let it sit there on the floor like a dead thing. He spent the next hours preparing for the quarterly investor call. He knew they couldn't shut him out of it. His name was on the agenda. Investors expected to hear from the CEO. And so he worked on his speech with grim determination, cutting every hint of anger from it, loading it with numbers, commitments, and the bold vision investors had once begged him to deliver. If they wanted a show, he'd give them one. At 10 a.m. sharp, he walked into the broadcast room. A glass wall faced the city skyline. Cameras and mics were arranged in a careful semicircle. Evelyn Harper was already there, tapping notes on her tablet, cool and perfect in her navy suit. Harold Wilson lounged in a chair near the window, legs crossed, watching with that same smug half-smile he'd worn in Chicago when he'd cut Marcus off at the knees. Thomas Barrett arrived last, all fake warmth, greeting Marcus with a handshake that felt like a snake coiling around his wrist. Marcus, Thomas said smoothly, let's keep this positive today. Investors are skittish. We want calm. Steady. Marcus didn't answer. He just walked to the mic and adjusted it carefully. Evelyn sat at the control table, tapping a button to bring the investor call live. The green light blinked on. Thomas opened. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Cobalt Technologies' Q2 Investor Update. We're committed to transparency and stability in these volatile markets. Marcus felt bile rise in his throat at the word stability. He waited, hands folded in front of him, eyes hard on the camera. Thomas continued, voice calm. We're grateful to our leadership team. I'll hand it over to Marcus Grant, our CEO, to discuss growth strategy. Marcus leaned in, voice steady and even. Thank you, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about the Sustainable Expansion Initiative. You've seen the numbers. Over $3 billion in committed funding. Investor letters in hand. We have agreements in principle with key partners. And while internal debate has slowed execution, the opportunity is still alive. If we move quickly, we can lock in contracts ahead of our competitors. This isn't reckless. It's necessary. Incrementalism is what kills companies in our position. Bold moves are how we win. I've spent months working directly with the investors you're representing today. They want this plan. They want this leadership. And I'm asking you to support it fully as designed. He paused, letting the words settle. For a moment, there was silence. Then he heard Evelyn's voice in his earpiece, cool and dismissive. Thank you, Marcus. Let's move to the revised projections. Marcus frowned. I'm not finished. Evelyn tapped a button on her console. Marcus watched the red light on his mic blink out. He felt his stomach lurch. Evelyn, he said sharply, turn my mic back on. She didn't even look up. We're moving on. He turned to Thomas. This is my section. Thomas wouldn't meet his eyes. Marcus reached for the mic, voice rising. Turn it on. Evelyn kept tapping, switching the feed to Harold Wilson. Harold cleared his throat, smiling into the camera. Let's talk real numbers. The board has been very clear. We're revising the initiative to a manageable scale, prioritizing profitability, stability, responsible growth. We want to reassure investors that we're not being reckless. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Turn it on. Evelyn finally looked at him. Her eyes were dead and flat. You're finished. Blogs and op-eds dissected the phrase in forensic detail. Investors, spooked by the chaos, were demanding answers. Harold Wilson hadn't shown his face since the call ended, and Evelyn Harper had gone to ground, refusing even to confirm meetings. Richard Sterling was reportedly out of town, which Marcus suspected just meant he didn't want to be photographed entering the building. Thomas Barrett was the only one who tried to reach Marcus, leaving him a pathetic voicemail asking to clear the air and find a way forward. Marcus didn't return the call. He didn't plan to. He watched the company's stock price slide in real time on his screen, a nauseating red line slanting downward. Every hour it dipped, losing millions in market cap, undoing years of carefully cultivated investor confidence. And all because they couldn't stand letting him lead. All because they thought they could silence him. He thought about Harold's voice, so casual, so certain. As long as we keep the money with the right people, Marcus felt no satisfaction watching them implode. Only grim clarity. They deserved it. At noon, he stood, straightened his suit, and walked to the elevator. He didn't bother telling his assistant where he was going. He just left, stepping out into the gray Boston afternoon. He walked for blocks without a plan, just letting the anger burn off. He passed lawyers and bankers, tourists with umbrellas, delivery drivers unloading crates onto wet pavement. Everyone hustling, heads down, no idea who he was or what he was carrying in his chest like a live coal. Eventually, he stopped at a small cafe he used to visit before he was CEO, back when he was still scrapping for contracts, building supplier relationships himself. The owner recognized him immediately, eyes going wide. Marcus offered a small nod. He ordered coffee and sat at a back table alone, pulling out his phone. He opened his email. Hundreds of unread messages. Investor reps demanding answers. Journalists asking for comment. Even a few death threats from faceless trolls who apparently felt Harold hadn't been racist enough. He ignored all of it except one thread. The one marked urgent in all caps. It was from Caroline West, lead partner at Perseid Capital, one of the single biggest sources of the $3.3 billion in soft commitments Marcus had personally secured over months of calls, meetings, and careful negotiations. She had stayed silent since the call disaster, and Marcus knew why. No smart investor wanted to step into a PR dumpster fire. But the subject line gave him hope. He opened it and read carefully. Marcus, call me. This isn't over. He dialed her immediately, hands shaking slightly, but his voice rocked steady when she picked up. "Caroline," he said. "Marcus." She sounded tired, but clear. "I watched the call." He said nothing. She exhaled. "Jesus, that hot mic line. Your head of product just buried the entire company in one sentence." "Fair enough," she said. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't hostile. It was the silence of calculation. Finally, she asked, "What are you going to do?" Marcus swallowed hard. "What I should have done weeks ago. I'm done compromising. They want me to quit. I'm not quitting. I'm going to put this entire mess in the light." She let out a small, dry laugh. "That's going to be ugly." She spoke slowly, carefully. "Look, I don't speak for every investor, but I know a lot of us. We didn't sign those letters because of Sterling or Barrett or Harper. We signed because of you, your plan, your vision, your work. Don't forget that." Marcus felt something tight in his chest loosen, just a fraction. "Thanks," he said quietly. "I'll do better than thanks," she replied. "You want to blow it up? Fine. But make sure you do it clean, controlled, so they can't spin it. You know they'll try." He nodded to himself. "I know." Evelyn Harper tapped her tablet with shaky fingers, her polished veneer crumbling as she realized they no longer controlled the narrative. Thomas Barrett looked like he might be sick, the color draining from his face as he realized that the entire coup had failed in a single afternoon. Marcus didn't move from where he stood at the head of the table. He kept his arms folded, eyes level, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. He wanted them to feel it, the weight of everything they'd done, the taste of their own fear. Finally, Richard cleared his throat, trying to recover his usual gravitas. "Marcus, let's be reasonable. No one wants this to turn into a spectacle. We can discuss terms. Find a compromise." Marcus smiled without humor. "Compromise? Like the advisory role you slipped under my door? Like cutting my mic on the investor call while you let Harold lie through his teeth? That kind of compromise." Richard hesitated. Evelyn opened her mouth, then closed it. Thomas swallowed hard. Marcus's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "There is no compromise. There is only this. You approve the plan today, as written, with me leading it. Or I call every investor on our list and tell them exactly what happened here. Every detail, every quote, every threat. And then I walk, with every dollar I brought to the table." He let them stew in it for another full minute before finally pushing away from the table. "You have an hour to decide," he said flatly. "After that, I won't be taking calls." He left the room without waiting for a response. He didn't go back to his office. He walked straight out of the building into the crisp Boston air, ignoring the buzz of his phone, the shocked stares of employees who parted for him in the hallway. Outside, he stopped for a moment on the sidewalk, feeling the cold wind on his face. He closed his eyes. He let himself breathe. In that moment, he wasn't the embattled CEO or the target of corporate racism or the man they tried to break. He was just Marcus, the same man who'd once sat in a cramped apartment writing pitch decks at 2 in the morning. The man who'd cold-called investors until his voice gave out. The man who'd built a vision so compelling people had staked billions on it. And he wasn't giving it up. He finally opened his eyes and started walking. Meanwhile, upstairs, the boardroom descended into chaos. Evelyn tried to regroup, insisting they could find another investor, but even she couldn't say it with conviction. Thomas snapped at her, blaming her for letting Harold run his mouth. Richard tried to calm them, but the fear in his voice was obvious. They all knew it. Caroline West's call hadn't just threatened to pull Perseid Capital. She threatened to pull the entire funding round, killing their expansion in its tracks and sending a message to the whole market that Cobalt Technologies was toxic. They were finished if they didn't cave. The hour Marcus gave them passed in agonizing silence. When he returned, the room was quiet, eyes down, paper shuffled. Richard Sterling cleared his throat. "We've reconsidered," he said stiffly. "We'll approve a plan." Marcus said nothing. Richard hesitated. "With you leading it." Marcus gave the smallest nod. "Good." No one cheered. No one even pretended to smile. But they all voted yes. He didn't stay for handshakes. He didn't want them. He walked out as soon as the vote was counted, already dialing Caroline. "It's done," he told her. "Good," she replied. "Now hold them to it." But Marcus knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because the next morning, everything blew up. Marcus Grant woke the morning after the leak to a pounding on his door, the Boston sky still the color of lead, the street outside slick with last night's rain. He hadn't really slept. Instead, he'd sat at his dining table, bathed in the glow of his laptop screen, reading every line of coverage, every investor statement, every public condemnation. He'd watched the stock chart dip and rise in panicked fits as traders tried to make sense of the chaos. He knew the truth before his phone even buzzed. The board was finished. The leak had been a nuclear bomb. No one could spin Harold's hot mic racism or Evelyn's emails bragging about slow-walking his funding. The story had spread from business news to mainstream media in less than 12 hours. The words corporate sabotage and racial bias were trending worldwide. Investors were livid. Employees were furious. Customers were asking pointed questions about leadership ethics. He finally opened the door to find his assistant standing there, pale and breathless. "You need to come in. Now." Marcus didn't argue. He threw on his coat, grabbed his phone, and didn't even bother with breakfast. By the time he reached headquarters, the lobby was crowded with reporters pressing against the glass, shouting questions about resignations and legal action. Security hustled him through a side door while cameras flashed and the morning shift of employees watched in awkward silence. Upstairs, the executive floor felt like a funeral home. The usual smell of coffee and polished wood had a stale edge. No laughter, no chatter. Just whispered strategy and the occasional sharp curse behind closed doors. He walked straight to his office without speaking to anyone. He needed a moment alone. He set his coat on the rack and turned to the window, watching the gray city wake up, the cars snaking down slick roads like slow blood through arteries. He let the silence settle. He wasn't scared anymore. He wasn't even angry. He was focused. The knock on the door came 20 minutes later. It was Thomas Barrett, looking rumpled and haggard, his tie askew, hair mussed in a way Marcus had never seen. Marcus gestured him in wordlessly. Thomas sat without being invited, clasping his hands so tightly the knuckles went white. He didn't even try to smile. "We need to talk." Marcus didn't sit. He kept his back to the window, arms folded, eyes level and cold. Thomas swallowed. "We screwed up." Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's one way to put it. Thomas's eyes darted around the office as if looking for an exit. The investors want blood. They're demanding resignations. They're naming names. Marcus said nothing. Thomas tried to laugh, but it broke halfway out, leaving only a dry cough. "Richard is preparing a statement. He's planning to step down." Marcus nodded once, slowly. "Good." Thomas licked his lips. "They want me gone too." Marcus let the silence hang until Thomas squirmed in his seat. "Are you surprised?" Marcus asked, voice level. Thomas's shoulders slumped. "We tried to control the message. We tried to protect the company." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You tried to protect yourselves. Don't get it twisted." Thomas's eyes dropped to the carpet. "I didn't want it to go this far." Marcus didn't answer. The silence grew heavy. Finally, Thomas looked up, voice cracking. "I'm sorry, Marcus." Marcus didn't flinch. "You're sorry because you got caught." Thomas's lip quivered slightly before he pressed it flat. "I'm resigning. Effective immediately. The board will vote this afternoon." Marcus inclined his head once. "Good. Anything else?" Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it. He rose slowly, pausing at the door like he wanted to say more. But Marcus didn't give him the chance. He turned back to the window and heard the door click shut behind him. He barely had time to breathe before Evelyn Harper showed up. She didn't knock. She pushed the door open with the same icy confidence she'd always had, but now there was a tremor at the edges. She looked flawless as ever, navy suit, hair pinned tight, but her eyes were bloodshot, and the tablet she held trembled slightly. She didn't sit. She didn't even greet him. She just stood there, shaking her head. "You happy now?" Marcus turned slowly. "Excuse me." Evelyn's voice was brittle glass. "You burned it all down." Marcus's eyebrow lifted. "I burned it down? Evelyn, I built this company's future while you were gutting it behind my back." Her voice rose. "We were trying to keep it stable." Marcus's voice cut across hers like a blade. "By sabotaging my plan, by cutting my funding, by telling the board I was unstable, by blocking growth that was fully funded." She hesitated, lips working, but no sound came out. Marcus stepped forward, voice low and controlled. "You wrote it all down. You bragged about it in email. Did you really think that wouldn't get out?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "The investors are furious. No one will work with us now." Marcus's voice didn't waver. "They'll work with me. They won't work with you." She looked stricken. "You can't survive this alone." Marcus shook his head slowly. "Watch me." Evelyn's mask cracked then. Her eyes brimmed with tears she refused to let fall. Her voice was a harsh whisper. "They're blacklisting me." Marcus didn't flinch. "Good. You earned it." She choked on a sob before turning and practically running from the room. He watched her go without a shred of pity. The next crisis was Harold Wilson. He didn't bother showing up in person. Marcus got the call from HR confirming his termination. The head of product was officially fired for cause before lunch. His hot mic line had become synonymous with racism in corporate America. Major clients had threatened to cancel contracts if he stayed. The board hadn't even tried to fight for him. They just cut him loose to staunch the bleeding. Richard Sterling was the last. He didn't visit in person, didn't call. Instead, he sent a carefully worded email announcing his retirement effective immediately, citing a need for new leadership and healing. The press saw through it instantly. Headlines that afternoon were brutal. Cobalt chairman resigns in racism scandal. Analysts called it the only move left to salvage the stock price. Investors issued cautious statements praising Marcus's leadership while condemning the legacy culture of the board. By dusk, the entire power structure that had tried to destroy Marcus was gone. Richard, Thomas, Harold, all out. Evelyn's resignation followed within a day. Once it became clear she couldn't even get a call back from the investors she'd once commanded with a single email. Marcus watched it all unfold from behind his desk. He called Caroline West. They talked for an hour about next steps, crisis PR, investor roadshows. She promised him support, real support, not the kind that disappeared when things got hard. He met with legal, with HR, with marketing. He scheduled an all-hands to address the staff. And finally, when the building was nearly empty, he sat alone in his office, lights off, the city glowing below like a galaxy spread across black velvet. Marcus Grant woke before dawn on his first day with undisputed control of Cobalt Technologies. But there was no sense of triumph in the quiet. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the early city sounds filter through the apartment windows. The hush of tires on wet pavement, the distant thump of delivery trucks, the echo of footsteps in the hallway. His body ached with exhaustion that went bone deep. His mind refused to shut off, buzzing with logistics, media strategy, investor management, employee morale. He had won, but it didn't feel like winning. He got up slowly, padded barefoot to the kitchen, made coffee by muscle memory. As the machine gurgled and hissed, he leaned against the counter and tried to let himself feel something like relief. Instead, he felt only the weight, the cost. He dressed in a dark tailored suit, knotted his tie with methodical precision, and left his apartment as the first hints of gray light brightened the eastern horizon. Security met him at the lobby entrance of the Cobalt building. Not the discreet nods he used to get, but visible, serious security, installed after reporters had tried to ambush employees in the parking lot. They greeted him as Mr. Grant now, no longer Marcus. A subtle shift, but one he felt in his bones. The executive floor was silent as he walked through. Evelyn's office was empty, its nameplate already gone. Harold's office door stood ajar, lights off, the glass walls exposing a mess of boxes half-packed, a career disassembled in cardboard. Thomas's corner suite had been cleared out overnight, even the art stripped from the walls. Richard's framed family photos had been stacked in the hallway, face down, as if no one could stand looking at them. Marcus paused for a moment, just staring at the debris of their power. Then he turned away and walked into his own office. He had barely set his briefcase down when Daniel Chun appeared in the doorway, tapping once, tentative. Marcus looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. Daniel didn't speak immediately. He just stood there holding his own briefcase in one hand like it was too heavy to carry. After a beat, Marcus jerked his chin toward the chair across from his desk. Daniel entered, sitting slowly, eyes on the floor. Marcus said nothing. He let the silence do the work. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat, voice ragged. "I am sorry." Daniel swallowed. "I know you don't want to hear it, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry for the vote. I'm sorry I didn't back you. I'm sorry I didn't call out their bullshit when it mattered." Marcus's voice was cold. "You said you wanted stability." Daniel winced. "Yeah, I did. And I was wrong. I was scared. I was scared of losing my seat, my reputation, my place in the club. So I told myself you were pushing too hard, that you were being reckless. It was easier than admitting they were being racist, and I was letting it happen." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, but he forced his face to stay blank. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. "When the leak happened and I read those emails and heard Harold's voice, I realized how much I'd lied to myself. About them. About me. About you." Marcus didn't respond. Daniel looked up finally, eyes wet. "I am sorry. I know it's not enough. It's nothing. But it's what I have." The room felt thick. Marcus inhaled slowly, forcing air into tight lungs. He wanted to rage at Daniel. He wanted to throw him out. But he also saw what it cost a man to say it. He didn't say, "I forgive you." He wasn't sure he did. But he nodded once. Daniel exhaled shakily. "I want to help. If you'll let me. I have my own fund. We'll back any diversity initiative you want to run here. Supplier programs, internship pipelines, board training, whatever you want. You set it up and we'll fund it. Nostrins punto." Marcus's voice was flat. "Why?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because it's the right thing. And because I owe you. And because I want this company to be what you said it could be." Marcus watched him a long moment before nodding again. "We'll talk." Daniel rose, nodding back, eyes wet. He left without another word. Marcus sat for a long time after, staring at the door. He was still sitting there when his assistant buzzed in. "Richard Sterling is here. He's asking to see you. Privately." Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. He almost told her to throw him out. But he paused, exhaled. "Send him in." The door opened slowly. Richard Sterling entered carefully, like a man approaching an uncertain animal. He looked older than Marcus remembered, the lines in his face deep, his hair mussed. He was dressed well, but not perfectly. His tie slightly askew, his collar wrinkled. Marcus didn't rise. He didn't offer his hand. He just waited. Richard stood in front of the desk for a moment, clearing his throat. "Marcus." Richard's voice cracked. "Not just about the plan. About you. About all of it. I convinced myself I was being prudent, careful, protecting the company. But I wasn't. I was protecting myself, and my comfort, and the idea that leadership looks like me." Marcus didn't blink. Richard swallowed hard. "I heard myself on those recordings. The things Harold said. The way Evelyn talked. And I thought about the times I could have stopped it. Should have stopped it. And I didn't." Marcus's voice was cold and even. "You ruined your own reputation. You nearly killed this company. You humiliated me. You tried to replace me while taking credit for my plan." Richard's lips trembled. "I know." Marcus let the silence sit like a weight between them. Finally, Richard's voice fell to a whisper. "What do I do now?" Marcus felt something hard in his chest crack just a hair. He sighed, leaning back. "You can't fix it with an apology. You can't make it up to me. But you can help make sure it doesn't happen again." Marcus's voice grew firmer. "You have money, influence. If you want to do something, help me rebuild this company the way it should have been. Fund the diversity programs Daniel's talking about. Speak publicly about what happened here. Own your part in it. Make sure no other board does this to another CEO again. Richard nodded slowly, swallowing hard. Okay. Marcus stared at him. Not a word. Not a press release spin. Real work. Real change. Richard's eyes were wet. Okay. Silence stretched between them. Richard straightened his tie shakily. Thank you for even listening. Marcus didn't answer. Richard turned and left the office quietly, closing the door with a soft click. Marcus let out a long breath. He turned to the window, watching the sunrise finally break over the city, light pushing through the gray clouds. He thought about everything he'd lost, about everything he'd fought for, about everything he still had to do. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He knew he'd face pushback, sabotage, cynicism, racism that wouldn't die just because a few men got fired or quit in shame. But he also knew he had allies now. Real ones. Daniel, Caroline. Employees who cheered him when he told them the truth. Investors who finally understood where the real risk had always been. He rested his palms on the desk and leaned forward, watching the city wake up. He wasn't going to save the company. He was going to change it. No more secrets. No more sabotage. No more keeping the money with the right people. He was going to make sure the right people were everyone. The end. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss a new chapter. I'd love to know what you think about this plot. Did the twist surprise you? How did you feel about Marcus's journey and the ending? Let's talk about it in the comments. And tell me where you're watching or reading from today. I always love seeing all the places people join in. Your thoughts, reactions, and feedback help keep these stories going strong. Thanks for being here and sharing the ride.